Yo, in Laravel, the N+1 problem is very common, and it happens because Laravel does lazy loading on relationships. Lazy loading means it will only load the relationship data when you actually access them. The inverse of that is eager loading, which is basically preloading relationships that you know you will access after you load the model. Of course, this does not make any sense, and for you that know me, you know that I'd like to go step by step through the problem in order to make it clear for absolute beginners. And for that, we are going to create a new Laravel project together. So I'm going to create a new Laravel project called N+1. I will not start with anything, just a bare minimum Laravel project. And while this is working, I want to introduce you to the Laravel debug bar. Laravel debug bar is a way that actually lets you very easily debug SQL queries and models, views, everything about your Laravel application during development. It's an absolute must-have almost for all Laravel developers. I want to see the day that this becomes by default. Anyway, I'm going to copy that. So by default, we're going to use SQLite. This is fine for me. We can run npm install and build. This is also fine for me. You'll notice here that by default, we have a users table by every Laravel application, and we're going to use that as our users. You'll see that in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open N+1 project in Visual Studio Code, my code of my code editor of choice. And then I am going to install Laravel debug bar. So basically I just copied this from the GitHub page. All of these links will be in the description, so don't worry about that. So we already installed Laravel debug bar. What we could do now is simply just artisan serve. This A is an alias for PHP artisan. So what I did is basically this, but in a shorter version. And then we know that it's on localhost. So what I could do is I could go to Firefox and then visit that, and there is our very common Laravel application. It's just very basic, and then you will notice that debug bar is right here. So this is what Laravel debug bar is. If you've never seen that, you're welcome. You could just close the video now and go play with it. Actually, don't close the video, I'm just kidding. But anyway, this is going to be very useful. Next, in order to set up the environment for our N+1 problem, we actually need to have a post. So we're going to use the very common theme of a blog, like a blog, and then you have users and you have posts. Now, every single user is going to have multiple posts. In order for us to do that, we need to let Laravel know about our posts. So I'm going to stop the server, and then I'm going to type A, which is PHP artisan. I'm going to make a model called post, and for that model, I need a migration, I need a factory, and I need a seeder. So this is what MFS stands for: migration, factory, and seeder. And you'll see that it created a post factory, a migration, and a seeder. Perfect. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the database and then to migrations and create posts table. A posts table will have only two things: a foreign ID for our user model. If you don't know what this auto completion is or how this is happening, it's basically GitHub Copilot. That's why it's trying to complete code for me. And sometimes it's very helpful, sometimes it's annoying and gets in the way, but you just learn to live with it. So our posts basically, or every post is going to have an ID. It's going to have a unsigned integer, which is going to be a foreign key for a user ID. So this will basically translate to user ID foreign key. And then it's going to have a title and then a created and updated tag. This is pretty common stuff. Next, I'm going to go to our factories and then define the post factory. So if I let just GitHub do stuff for me here, this is way too much. I don't need that. And then the user ID is going to be the user factory, which basically every time I try to factory a post, it's going to create a new user for it, and I don't really care. This is fine for me. All right, next thing is we can go to the seeders now. Where are seeders? There we go. So the post seeders, what I'm going to do is I'm going to factory our post actually. So I can go post factory 10 and then just create. So yeah, this will basically create 10 posts whenever we run that, and to run that I can delete this default user, I don't care about it, and then I can do this call, and then I will call the post seeder, and that's it. That's all I really need. To make sure everything is working, I am going to migrate, so php migrate fresh dash seed, which drops all the tables, creates the migration table, runs the migrations, and run our seeders. So now our database, we can check that with Tinker. It has posts, so I can type post all. Oh, post not found. Okay, let's give it the full pass to the posts, and then you can see we have multiple posts, and each one is associated with a different user ID. Perfect. So right now our application or our database is ready for our testing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our web. Actually, we don't need to edit anything here. I could simply just swap this in for a Tailwind CDN. So I'm just gonna pull Tailwind to make things look clearer. So I'm gonna have here all posts. We're not gonna spend time on styling at all. I'm going to have a div with a class of empty4, just a little bit of a space, and then we are going to go for each posts, we are going to have a post title. We don't have a content, just a title, and then I'm going to have created by, and then I'm going to get the user of the post, and then I'm going to get their email. Now I want you to notice we don't have the relationships yet set on the post model, which is what we're going to do right now. I'm going to create a user relationship, and this will be a belongs to relationship, and then this belongs to the user. So now on a post we can access the user relationship, and then we can access their email. Perfect. I am going to serve the application actually before I forget. So now it's available locally. I'm going to refresh this page, and then of course we get an error. That's because we are not passing our posts variable here. So post is simply going to have a post all, and then I am going to pass these posts as the posts variable. Perfect. Let's refresh, and there you go. We have all posts right here, and then all of the posts are created by these respective like emails. I think we have names available on users, right? If we go to create users table, yeah, we do have a name, so maybe it might be a little bit easier to just show the name instead of the email. There you go. Now this is all fine, right? So basically this is all basic Laravel stuff, and this is how beginners go about doing this kind of thing. But I want you to notice here the queries. So you can see that the queries here, we are executing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 queries in order to fetch these posts, right? Now you'll notice we created 10 posts in our factory. If you remember, if I go to post factory, post seeder, you will notice that we have 10 posts created whenever we see the database. So to fetch these 10 posts with their user, we had to run 12 queries. This is not good. Even though it takes 40 microseconds and 50 microseconds, this is because I'm on a local environment and we're running through a SQLite database, which you might not be running on your production, and you might not have it on the same server. So these things start to add up. Also, we are only having 10 posts here. What if you have hundreds or even thousands? Of course, you might have some kind of pagination, but still, you don't want to eager load all of that, you don't want to lazy load all of these information for every single post that you have. This is basically the N+1 query. So for 10 posts, you had to run 11 queries in order to fetch all of them, right? So how do we solve this actually? Well, we simply leverage, like we said, if you are awake and if you are paying attention, I wanted to hear the answer from you. Unfortunately, you cannot answer me in the video, but you are going to use eager loading, which basically means you are going to tell Laravel, I know I am going to use the user relationship on the posts, on the post model, and that way I want you to load that relationship or preload that relationship on the posts collection that you bring me. That way I don't need to query the database every time I ask for the user relationship. To do that, it's actually pretty simple. You can do post with and then user and then just all, or get in that case. So what this will do is it's going to tell, give me every post collection or every post model that you are going to fetch, append to it the user relationship, and then get me the results. Now I want you to notice here, if I give it a refresh, we are getting the exact same data, but look at the queries now. We are only executing 3 queries, and you can actually see the difference here. We are basically selecting users where the user's ID is in like these IDs, which are the user IDs that are associated with each of the posts, right? So we identified that we want these 10 posts. We know because of this with keyword that we are going to access the user relationship on the post model. And then what Laravel did is it preloaded all of the user data in one query, and then it appended them to the post model, or to each of the post model in this collection. So now whenever you access the user relationship, it's already loaded on the post model, and you don't need to go hit the database in order to fetch it. Now, when to use this? Basically, if you have a for each and then you're doing something similar to that, so you are loading a relationship on every single element in the for each loop, then you know you have an N+1 problem, and all you need to do is just load or preload the relationship here. This is actually all that you need to do. Now, one more thing. This is a bit of an advanced tip, or like an extra tip, since you watched the video to the end here. Do you see how we are selecting star from users? This is a problem, right? Because think about it. If you want to only load the name, because this is actually the only thing that we're using here, we're only using the user's name. So there is no reason to select everything from the user's table. I want you to imagine that the user's table has a lot more information that you don't need. If, for example, has a password that you don't need, it has a configuration JSON that, like a single column could have like hundreds of lines or thousands of lines. It's pretty big to fetch, and you actually don't need it. Why are you storing it in memory right now? So it completely does not make sense. So what you could do here is basically you could specify Do you see how in the query that we have select star from users, where users ID in and then the IDs? So this star is actually inefficient because you are trying to select, or actually you are selecting every single column that exists on the users table. Let me fix the camera here. Okay, so you are selecting every single column on the users table, and this of course is very inefficient. It has so many columns that we're not using. If you'll notice in our example here, we're only using the name of the user and the ID of the user. So only, or really the only 2 columns that we need is the ID and the name of the users. But right now we are selecting star. Imagine if the user has password. Actually, don't imagine. The user has passwords that you don't need to fetch and store in memory. The user might have a configuration JSON column that could have hundreds, if not thousands of bytes, or even megabytes if you're that crazy, which you do not need to fetch and store in memory for every single user. All right. So basically, we need to optimize this query to select only the ID and the name of the user. How do we do that? We basically do that, if I can fetch my Visual Studio Code, you add a colon here, which is like 2 dots, and then you specify the column names that you want Laravel to fetch with a comma in between. Now what this tells Laravel is, preload the user relationship, but only the ID and the name columns from the users table. If we go back and give it a refresh, you can see that it works the exact same way, but we have optimized this query massively compared to just the select star. Now in the eager loading documentation on Laravel, you will see that when using this feature, which is loading columns, you should always include the ID column and any relevant foreign key column in the list of columns you wish to retrieve, because under the hood Laravel is going to use these IDs in order to link them to the original, like in our example, post model. Because how else would it know? If you fetched users without an ID, then it cannot connect this user to this post using the user ID column on the post, right? So every post model has a user ID column or a user ID property, and then you on your users you have an ID property. This is the connection between a post and a user, and so you must always like fetch or select every single foreign ID column on your relationship in order to do this linking behind the scenes. So this was it for the N+1 problem. We explained what it is, we explained how to fix it, and we also explained how to optimize it even further. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, give me comments and feedback in the comments. I love constructive criticism. I want to build a tech community that basically shares information for free. I am trying to explain things as much as I can and go as deep as I can into things. I always consider that people are watching my videos are complete beginners and they want to learn things well while not being overwhelmed by complex topics. N+1, when I first learned about it, I did not know what was going on, and maybe I am very dumb, but again, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible so you don't have to be as dumb as I was back when I was learning this stuff. Thank you for watching and have a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe.